Welcome everybody to this Tuesday morning, Raising the Bar series. This is 2 of 12, how to prepare a successful open house. And it is a 2-hour CE class, so that's good for everyone. Just to remind you of those rules from the division. Hopefully that will show up on the screen. Here we go. Obviously, display full name on the screen and have your video turned on. In attendance for the whole of the class, you seem engaged. We'll hopefully engage with each other as we go through this class. And of course, I'll give you 3 keywords. Now, when this little icon pops up, they'll flash on the screen, so it should be easy for you to locate those. I will not respond to any chat. There's the end. We'll respond to chat if you've got any chat items. But please just unmute and chime in with any of your comments, thoughts, or stories, or questions, so that we can all learn from each other. Okay, so raising the bar, irrespective of which brokerage you're with, we feel that we can all do better when we have a bit more education, share ideas with each other, and raise our bar in real estate, become better agents. Jennifer Yard, principal broker at Presidio Real Estate, has said this: doing the right thing in every area of our jobs only makes the industry better as a whole. Staying committed to that helps us all have a strong, resilient, long-lasting career, and will bring more referrals and business to you than you can ever imagine. That's why at Presidio, we all pledge to raise the bar, and hopefully we can do that today. Found this interesting quote from Abraham Lincoln: most folks are as happy as they make up their minds to be. Now, I looked at his face and I thought, does he look happy? Make sure you look happy when you're working with your clients. I thought that was a good little note from that former president there. So I'm going to talk today about how we can prepare for a successful open house. I'll try and go through it in quite detail so that those of us are certainly brand new in this industry can learn. And those of us that have been in here for a while can maybe be reminded of some things we can do to make our open houses better. So there we have our open house. Let's see if we can figure out what we're doing on this today. Obviously, the best part of an open house, if we are able to have one with our client, it can help them get their home shipshape and ready for showing. It's a good time to aim to get things ready for good showing to the open house. So we'll look at a few things here. We'll cover some preparation items, and my screen has stopped loading in there, so I'm just going to pull it in again, see if the internet is slowing me down here. Here we go. Let's try it again. Now we'll look about setting up, look at the presentation, we'll talk about cleanup, and we'll finish up with the follow-up. So that's what we're trying to discuss today. What's our first priority? Well, of course, our first priority is how to get a date. Once you've got a client and they've signed their listing agreement and you've had a discussion about an open house and they're happy to have one, then let's get that date early on, because then everybody is working for the same target time for that open house. Sometimes it may take a home or an owner to get that home prepared. It may take them several weeks. So let's make sure that we've got a date in mind so we're all aiming for the same time. Here's a question: who could tell me what they feel best days or times are for open houses? Let's start off with that question. Who's done open houses here today? Chelsea, fire away. Just chime in. You don't have to put your hand up. I can't see all of the pics, so just unmute and chime in. Tell us, Chelsea, about your open houses. Have any of you found them to be the best time of days?
I think for me, either Friday nights or Saturday mornings. So when people are out and about, and I don't know, during the week I've had a harder time just because people get off work and they've got to go feed their kids and do homework and stuff like that. So
yeah, I would certainly agree with that. Anybody like to add to that? Anybody have any other successes on other days of the week or other times of days of the week? What about the length of time? Chelsea, while you're still with me there, how have you found the ideal time period that you have the slot, the length of time for an open house? Hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? What have you found to be most successful for you?
for me, I've found 2 to 3. It's kind of just what you want to do, but usually 2 hours is pretty sufficient for me. And like if I do Friday, I do like either 4 to 6 or 5 to 7, and then Saturday morning maybe 10 to 12.
Okay, good. Anybody else like to chime in on other ideas of times for open houses? Okay, let's tuck in and start on the preparation. So make sure that, there's some thoughts you might consider. Just make sure that when you're working with an open house, your priority is to sell the house. That's your first priority. Okay, you're representing your client and they want to sell their home, and you are the realtor. You're going to help them do that. You know, we shouldn't be focusing our open houses on getting ourselves leads. If our focus is on getting leads, then maybe we might not make that open house as good as it should be, because our focus should be on selling that property. That's where all our energy comes. If we get leads from the open house, wonderful. That's a great job. And if we've got a happy client who has found that we've done well for them, they most likely will share that experience with others and we'll get more leads in it anyway. Okay, that covers that. Let's go on to our next page here. So preparation, let's look at a few things here. We'll talk about how we prepare the property. We'll talk into some advertising and marketing, how we prepare our seller, and of course, any forms and paperwork that we might be using as we get involved in this process. So let's start off with preparing the property. See if I can load it. Oh, there's our first keyword. A bit early today, but that's fine. So our first keyword will be preparation. That should be on the screen and should be shouting out on the screen. Preparation, preparation. So just jot that down. That will be your first keyword. I will not repeat that keyword again, and we can't just share it in the text or share it with other participants. But that'll be the first keyword on this class. And when you challenge without talk to Leslie. Leslie,
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did share the link in the chat. Feel free to click on that now and you can fill in the keywords as the class goes along. Sometimes it takes, some people have had a problem where it takes them off of the class and they can't get back. So either way.
So while you're still on, Leslie, can you just check, see who I've got on this class? I've got Susan, Chelsea, Kelsey, Deanna, Lillian, Andrew, Haley, and I'm not sure who the others are that have joined us.
Ellen and Dusty. I don't think you said those names.
Dusty, okay, great.
I'm here also. Lori.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Laurie. So
Sorry.
Ellen, Heidi, Lauren, Dusty, Andrew, Lillian, Deanna, Laurie, Susan, Chelsea. Kelly is not on camera, so okay, you're good.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so let's move along and see if we can learn something as we look at this. So first of all, really important that you stage your home. We want to try and get some really good pictures of that home. And the first thing that comes up is clutter. Let's talk about clutter. Sometimes folk don't realize they have clutter in the home. And you know, there is a price on clutter. If we remove the clutter from the home, the price of the sale of the property will go up. So, you know, they are going to get paid for removing that clutter. Let's have a little chat about that first. Who can talk to me about how sensitive sometimes this can be when we're working with a client? We try to help them remove some of the clutter. They've lived there for many years and they don't know it's clutter. All right. Yes, fire away. Who is that?
Stephen, this is Lori Lee. I have a couple thoughts about some of the things that you've said, but in response to that question, one of the things that I do to help them feel like I'm not attacking them individually about removing their clutter is just a discussion about how most buyers don't have the ability to see through, to see themselves there unless a lot of the personal things are cleaned out. And since they're going to be moving anyway, we just start the packing process ahead of time and suggesting that, you know, they pack up all of the things that don't make their house look like a model home. What we're going for is a model home look. And if they can start taking down photos and knickknacks and personal things and packing them up for their move, that it's going to make the house show better. And that way we don't have to get into what's junky and what's not junky. It's just a matter of, hey, let's start packing. And I also think as we get started into this discussion about marketing, you asked about how long to do an open house. And I think if the client has to do a lot of preparation for the open house, like cleaning and getting ready, and they're really excited, that they feel ripped off if it's only a couple hours. And I think too, that if you put a lot of time into your marketing and an effort, and it's a big deal, you're going to do a production, that doing it for 4 hours on a Saturday or something is not a bad idea, especially now with how many buyers there are. Sometimes you can fill up a whole 4-hour Saturday with people coming through. And so I think to kind of get your money's worth for your effort that you're putting into the marketing and the effort that the seller is putting into preparing their house, that it sometimes might be better to do just a larger chunk of time. You could meet more people, more people get to go through it. It's kind of a win-win, especially in this market.
Very good, very good. Well, thanks for sharing some thoughts there on the clutter and also on the time of the home. Another criteria, of course, with the time frame of the open house is what the family can afford. Because sometimes on a Saturday, they can't be out that long. So, often agents are running a couple of hours or so to kind of meet that balance. But certainly if you've got the opportunity and, you have the time to do a longer open house, that can be definitely beneficial to bring in more potential buyers. And it also depends on how you're marketing, of course. So clutter, yes, some very good points there raised. You're absolutely right. If they're going to be moving home, then everything's going to go anyway. So we might as well get rid of the items that are going to help the house look better as we present it. The other challenge we sometimes have, and I'd just like to have a chat about this as well, is not just what's in the home, but what's outside of the home, in the front and backyards and in the basement. Sometimes those areas can be other places of clutter. How might we deal with that? Particularly if we're putting a lot of items into a basement. Yes, fire away.
So what I ask them to do and tell them as I'm talking to them about the neutrality and like the previous person was talking about taking away the personal clutter. And I said, people can envision the fact that you're ready to move. And so boxes are okay. And if they're neatly stacked, box away, put them in a corner of the garage, put them in a corner of the basement. That's better than seeing all the stuff.
Perfect. And just a note on that, thanks for that, Deanna. When we're working with the basement, just be aware that a potential buyer does like to see the mechanical room and does like to see where that main water line feed is, and anything else that's important for the functioning of the home. So when they're putting boxes in there, I'm glad that Deanna said have things boxed up, because boxes tend to stack quite nicely, and you can make sure that you can get walkways to those areas that are potential buyers.
If it's an unfinished basement, well, any basement, I recommend that they put them into the corner where maybe there's a storage area or future storage area, so that they can still envision the big open place where maybe they can either use or finish a large family room or a bedroom or something like that. You don't want to take that away from their vision.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you've got to try and still keep it neat and tidy wherever you're putting those boxes. But certainly when we put things or stuff into boxes, it looks much neater than just piling it on top of, tables and chairs and counters and whatnot. So just be aware of that when you're trying to remove clutter. Let's talk a bit about the outside. We've been talking about the outside and clutter outside and what we're really talking about with removing stuff outside.
Weeds.
Yeah, weeds are a form of clutter. Absolutely. The old broken bikes and the shed that's falling down, those pieces also need to have some attention. So even though we're trying to make the inside of the home look good, just remember that clutter also refers to what is outside. We might call it junk. We've got a neighbour and he's been there for whatever it is, 40 years. I tell you what, when he passes on, whoever's going to clear that property out, they've got a serious challenge. They've got a serious project just on the outside of their house, because there's so much stuff there. So any other thoughts on removing clutter or the clutter topic, as it is a kind of a sensitive topic?
I think it's also entertaining to see the seller begrudgingly remove all of that stuff and box it up. And I remind them that they're going to have to move it anyway. So this is just part of their move. But then when it's all said and done and their house looks like a model home, they go, huh, this looks really good. And why would I sell it?
That's right. Yeah, I've seen that happen as well. Yeah, very good. So just remember that as long as they understand that removing clutter, there is a price tag attached to that, and they're getting paid for it. Ultimately,
Oh,
they are getting paid.
I didn't hear any solutions of how you address junky yards. Anybody, how do you address that with your clients?
Laurie Lee, thank you for reminding me on that. Who'd like to take that challenge? How do we get rid of the junky yards? You know, I think we tackle it the same way. Yes, fire away, Susan.
So we just closed on a house, my partner and I, where they were borderline hoarders. And it was an especially difficult one to talk to them about cleaning up, and especially their yard, because they have 4 kids and they have every like outside toy and millions of bikes. And so and they have a dog, and they had not cleaned up the dog waste in the backyard in quite some time. And so we had to sit down and talk with them about how the curb appeal, when someone drives by your house, or in the pictures, when they take the pictures, that's a huge selling point, is the curb appeal. And so we talked to them about how important it is, that first glance, and how cleaning that up could suck someone in and could cause someone to want to see their house, just because that first initial look makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the dog waste. I remember showing a house once, and well, you couldn't walk anywhere in the backyard because the dog waste had not been, I don't think it had been cleaned. It was just everywhere. And it was so much, it would have been a serious job to, tackle that. And I could see, wow, these people just have, they got too much to do. And of course, that does not look appealing. So outside definitely makes a huge difference. Just get rid of the clutter. It's got to go anyway, as we've all said.
Just for your comic relief, I sold a house where in addition to 3 dogs, they had a pig. And that made a lot of mess. And I just said, some other people may find this endearing and some may find it offensive. So can you just maybe put the pig in his pen? And they're like, but he wanders over the whole yard. I'm going, yeah, that's obvious. It's a hard one. It's a hard one because they love their animals, and you can't tell them that those animals are messy and stinky.
Yeah. It's really good to have that conversation early on, because your open house will be much more successful if we can at least tackle this area and make everybody comfortable.
So I just wanted to say something there. So I had
just tell me who's speaking, because I can't see it. Please tell me your name when you do.
This is Andrew.
Oh, it's Andrew. Super. Fire away, Andrew. Thank you.
So I had a stager years ago, and I loved her perspective. She always talked about how, obviously the front of the house, the curb appeal, but she specifically talked about cleaning the porch. So cleaning the cobwebs off of the porch light, clean the glass in the porch light. And the reason is because your clients are standing there while you're trying to find the key box or open the key box, and they're looking around, and that porch is really their first impression of the house. And so anyway, I love that. And so that's something I always focus on.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Andrew. And of course, the potential buyer, when they're looking at the cobwebs and the dirty glass in the lamp, they're thinking, oh, this is a open house. And if the sellers have not had the ability to even look at this area, then what else is in the house that I cannot see, that is also a mess? And I'm going to have to clean up those cobwebs and clean that, that lamp when I move in, because obviously they're not going to do it. If they can't do it for the open house, they are not going to do it. That's the bottom line. So yeah, very good point. Anybody had experience with deep clean? Sometimes a home may need a deep clean, or sometimes it may not. But talk to me about that.
Go with the smell first. And sometimes you have to ask them, it's not just what you're looking at. Sometimes there's a smell that has to be neutralized.
Right. Particularly sometimes with animals, or sometimes with older properties, you know, that have that sort of musty sort of smell with old, I guess, clothes or things that are in there that have been in there for a long time. So in that case, a deep clean can be very helpful. A deep clean can also be helpful if the home has not had a deep clean for a long time. Often people do a deep clean in their homes, you know, maybe once or twice a year. But if a home has been there for many years and never had a deep clean, you know, that sort of grime can be hard to get rid of. And sometimes it might be helpful just to get a company in to do that. It would only cost a few $100s. Sometimes we've done that and it's made a huge difference. Any other thoughts on deep clean? And if you've got a client that, for whatever the reason, doesn't see that this is necessary, and you can see that it's absolutely necessary, sometimes you can use that as part of a help section from you. You may say, you know, I'll help you on this deep clean, and maybe, you know, pay for it or pay part of it, which can help them sort of, you know, get into the interest of getting that job done. Certainly windows need to be cleaned. I think that's a big help if you can get the windows looking, you know, clean and shiny. We talked about the jump from outside. Rain gutters are another important, particularly at this time of year. We've just gone through the winter months or the fall. We're in the winter months, so sometimes those rain gutters can be full of leaves or debris. It's a good idea to get those out, because if your open house runs after a storm or whatever, then all of that, I guess, stuff in the gutters will most likely end up on the sidewalks. Home wash, particularly for stone work and siding, can be very helpful if you want to make that home look sparkling. And I think Andrew mentioned about the front door. You know, it doesn't cost too much money to put a welcoming mat there, brand new one, or a flower basket, or even put some new house numbers, or maybe even a lick of paint on that home front door to make it inviting. It also helps
One other thing on that front porch, I appreciated the gentleman's comments about that, because I've seen some that I deal a lot with in the Uinta Basin area too, where there's a lot of country feel. And before the wife shows up with the children, the man has already hung his animal heads on the wall. And that goes right along with that is the front porch that is so country and so cluttery, and it makes it look small. And so in addition to it being clean, I think just like the house, it needs to be neutral and show its space rather than just its decor.
Yeah, perfect comment. Thank you, Deanna. Any other thoughts on that slide that we might add to or comment on before we move on to the next slide? Perfect. I just show you this little visual here. When you're working with the interior of the home, try and make the space look bigger. And Deanna just highlighted that with the front porch. But when you're looking at like closing a closet, if you notice this photograph here, will show you that this is not a full closet. Okay, you've got a couple of shelves there that are completely empty. You've got space in some of those hanging units, and you've got some space on the shelves at the bottom there. When you're working with closets and drawers and cupboards, try and create space within them, because that opens up the area, opens up the mind. It allows the buyer to feel that they can be in that space. If you look into a closet and it's actually jam-packed of all clothes and stuff, that they can't visualize themselves using that space. It just looks like clutter. So just think about that. If you can make closets and cupboards and drawers with some empty space in there, you'll increase the appeal for the buyer. Any thoughts or comments on that?
This is Andrew again. So that was my other big one that my stager loved, is she always talked about make sure the floor is clean. You can take a closet. This picture is a good example. You can put stuff on the shelves in the closet. Those hangers could all be full, and that closet would still look good as long as the floor is clean. And so she really emphasized that in pantries, in closets. The floor was what will make it look big.
Yeah, if you notice just at the bottom of that picture, you can see that the vacuum has been on the carpet there. People do like to see those vacuum lines because they know that it has been cleaned and prepared for them. Creating space in places is a great way to make a home look attractive. All right, let's go on to some other thoughts on here. So there are going to be some repairs that may need to be done in the home. You're going to have that conversation with your client, figure out that there may be some repairs that need to be done. So you've got to figure out whether or not the client's going to do them or they're not going to be done. And if they're not going to be done, is the client going to give some money towards that, or we're not doing that and that's part of the deal? So talk about repairs, and the repairs that need to be done, either the client is going to do them themselves, or maybe they might be out of their range of skills and maybe they've got to get a contractor in to do those repairs. So let's make sure we get those done within a timely period. And in some cases, I had a client that there was I think it was a ring on top of one of the gas hobs there that needed to be replaced. And that had to be ordered from a contractor. It wasn't going to be done in a short time, but then we can mention that to the homeowners and say, yeah, we are fixing that, that hob there, and it will be paid for and done, whether before or after we close on this property. So let's just have a chat about repairs for the moment. Anybody got any thoughts on repairs and how we might handle that? And just chime in because I can't see everybody. Let's ask someone. Ellen, how would you like to chime in with your thoughts on repairs? I'll see if I can involve a few other folk here.
Sure. So one thing I like to do is go through with the clients, for example, if they're willing to accept an FHA loan, there's certain things that will pass, right? So we go through and I mention those items and tell them they need to be done. So
Ellen, just while you're on that topic, can you just tell everybody why we might mention the FHA loan? Why is that particularly an interesting topic on repairs?
Because a lot of people like to use them. It brings in a greater amount of buyers. And there are certain things that the FHA loan just won't accept, like peeling paint, for example, those kind of items. And so I just always tell my clients, let's get those fixed before it's even a problem. So
a little bit more picky. That's the bottom line, isn't it? The FHA will require probably a little bit more detail on repairs than maybe a conventional bank. So very good. Thanks for raising that. Any other thoughts on repairs?
This is Lori. Excuse me. You can always do a home inspection before you list it, which, in this market, sellers don't have to go to all this trouble because you can sell something even if it's not in great repair. But
yes, that's correct.
You can always do a home inspection beforehand and let the buyers know that that's been done, and, show them what was, provide the home inspection for them. Then they don't have to do it. And you can show, these line item things that were an issue that have now been taken care of, and use that as an additional selling technique. It also brings to the front of mind of the sellers of how many issues there potentially are with their property, so they're not taken aback by that, and helps them to be a little more reasonable with, any price adjustments that need to be made for those repairs. So that's something that can be done. But I have found that my clients are either really easy as far as making repairs and doing things around the property because they want it to sell. They have just a personal sense of pride in what they do, and equity with other people. So they'll want to put their home together nicely and they're okay with that. They're right on top of it, or else they are extremely resistant and simply say, I'm selling this as is and I'm not doing anything with it. And if that's the case, then, you know, you simply have to market it that way to the buyers.
Two really good points you raised there, Laurie. One was obviously, you know, if we're doing repairs, let's mention which ones we've done, because that can be very helpful to potential buyer. You know, this has been repaired or this has been replaced. They're brand new, which is really good. And then, of course, once we obviously mentioned those repairs, if you do have a report from an inspection, it's a great advantage for the seller to know roughly what they're going to have to deal with, because sooner or later a potential buyer is going to get their own inspector in, and most likely the same thing's going to flag up. So yeah, we can't get away from it. The repairs need to be addressed, and hopefully we can have this home, you know, in the best shape. So you're absolutely right. Every home is going to sell at a price, but if the home is presented better and all the repairs are done, you are going to get more for the property. You are going to get your top dollar, and that's what we're after. We talked a little bit about that earlier on. I think Deanna talked about the basement being clean and tidy. Pretty important we do that. You know, even if you've got a basement that's unfinished, like this one here, you can see that everything's neat and tidy. The floor is clean. I think Andrew mentioned that. It has got some items in there, but they are clean and tidy and put into a place of organisation. So make sure we do that. I think I've just lost my connection. Let me just see. Is it coming in or not? Okay, let's just pull back in again. Page, see if I'll pull in better. There we go. Sometimes it may be an advantage to rearrange furniture in a room. If you do that, you can make the room appear bigger. I remember being with one client. They've got quite a large sectional area in, I guess, the sort of the main living area, which was close to where the kitchen was. Well, the kitchen, it was all in one room basically. But to get to the kitchen, there was only probably 4 foot room between the end of this sectional furniture and the wall. And it looked a little bit busy. But by removing 1 or 2 of those sections of furniture, it opened it up. It made the room look much bigger. So consider that. We also talked about some smells and that. If you are looking at using air neutralizers or, you know, some sort of soft scent aromatherapy, just be careful that you don't overdo it. Okay, you don't want people walking in to a home and they've got this new smell which is very strong, and it's obvious it's trying to replace another smell that's there. So be aware of that. And maybe we should talk about that in a moment. I'll just run through these and we'll go through these as we want to talk about. Bedroom covers, make sure they're neutral and clean. That's another area that we can get better on. If you've got the bed cover that's got very, very busy patterns on, sometimes that can make the room look smaller. You need to make it bigger. Making sure that all of your surfaces are clean, your baseboards right to your ceiling fans, your windows, your mirrors, and your floors. Ceiling fans will have dust on when we're looking at homes today because they've not been used for a few months, and you know, you put the ceiling fan on, all the dust flies around, so be aware of that. I know maybe you've got some opportunity to clean the garage out or the outbuildings with some jet sprays. So let's just look at a few of those items. Let's talk about that neutralizer smells in the home, how we deal with that, because that's a big topic these days. Who'd like to talk about that? Who we've not heard from? Let's see. Dusty, how would you like to chime in on that one?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's so good to hear you. Wonderful. How are you today, Dusty?
Hey, good morning. I am doing good.
How long have you been a realtor for?
I'm sorry?
How long have you been a realtor for?
Well, here in Utah, about 2 years, but I was a realtor in California since 2000.
Perfect. Well, you've got lots of experience to share with us on this now. So talk to us about it. You're the right person to talk to.
Actually, most of my experience was with new home sales. So this is fairly new to me.
So talk about if we've got a home that maybe it has some, maybe got some animal odor in there, which is quite strong. How are we going to work with neutralizing that?
It's touchy. You have to be very careful because some people do get offended. But when I've done open houses myself, I will even bring candles and light candles. If you need to keep it smelling good for all the showings and whatnot. Even the little plugins in the walls throughout the rooms.
All right. Have you ever dealt with a client that's had strong animal odor?
No, fortunately I haven't. Not too bad. There's been some dirty homes and I've actually had to clean myself for the open house. I would get the broom and sweep and do their sliding glass windows because they had dogs that would get those pretty dirty and messy. But the first impressions mean so much, and the cleaner the home, the better it is.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else like to chime in? Because I really want us to figure out how we deal with strong animal smells or animal challenges in homes, because it comes up and it will be helpful for us to figure out how we can.
Stephen,
Yes.
there's some products that I was selling a home last year, a cabin that had some mice activity in it. And then apparently one of the fellows died and it was really bad in the closet. And we used a fogger. You can get these like at IFA or sometimes at your pet stores. And you can put those in a room or an area and then leave for a while. That once again, you have to be really careful about not hurting people's feelings, but that will actually neutralize that odor. Or you can also use, some Clorox water and things like that if things need to be wiped down, if there's been maybe a mouse running around or something like that.
Yeah, very good, very good. What about if we've got, let's take cats, for instance, because they tend to have an aroma that can be quite difficult to get rid of.
First of all, you make sure they're not in the house when you have your open house. That will help. Because people will be looking for, people that see an animal will be more sensitive to trying to pick up a smell.
Yeah, and there are some people that are allergic to different animals. Cats is one of them, of course. If we've got a carpet that's heavily soiled, you're most likely going to have to get rid of that carpet. It doesn't matter how many plugins you put in, it's still going to be there. And most likely the carpet's got to come up and the underlay's got to come up. That's the pad that's underneath the carpet. And maybe the wood below or whatever it is below then needs to be treated and cleaned before you put the new carpet on. You'll have to have that conversation, because if it's bad, and I have been to some houses where it has been really bad, someone has to do it. Either the seller's got to do it, when the person who moves in, the buyer, they will have to tackle that challenge. Laurie, did you just come online there?
I did. I was going to say, I had a client just a few months ago, and the smell, gosh, everyone that came in for the showings could smell it. And
that's the challenge.
It was a huge detriment. And so we started going around trying to figure out what it was. And he was a little bit of a hoarder too, and very attached to a lot of old things. The house hadn't been updated at all. And he was definitely doing the sell as is, but the smell was a big deterrent. And so we ended up ripping up the carpet in his master bedroom, which ended up being the problem. So we ripped it up, but underneath we found just these really incredible wood floors. So we didn't even recarpet. We just Clorox the wood floors that were underneath and cleaned it. And it took care of the smell, but ripping out the carpet was super key to being able to do that.
Yeah, just let's make sure we capture that Laurie Lee's just shared, because sometimes you cannot get rid of the smell without removing the material that it's on. And one of the challenges definitely is cats, so just be aware of that one. And just be careful when you're using any type of scent product that it's not overpowering. You shouldn't really walk into a room and all you smell is the scent. You know, it should be in the background, very soft. It should not be a heavy, strong scent, because that will also deter your potential buyers. Any other comments or thoughts on any of those items on that slide that anybody would like to share? Very good. Let's move on. Oh, one little note there. It's an easy one to forget, this one is, but your little vents, if they've not been cleaned for a long time, you can find quite a bit of dust on those vents. It's a good idea to clean those if you can. You know, make sure obviously your filters are being changed out, but I'm really talking about the vents that don't even have filters. They're the return vents, and if you're not careful, they can look quite dirty if they've not been looked at for a long time. So just check those little vents out. All right, some more items on, we covered that, a bit about the weed pulling. Tidy up your flower beds or your vegetable patches, etc. Make things look as clean and neat as you possibly can. Talked a bit about windows. Window cleaning will probably make one of the biggest impact on the home. I'm talking inside and outside. If you can get those windows so they're so clean that it looks like there's no glass there, that can make a huge difference to a home.
It also helps our drought, because every time we have it done, it rains.
Yeah, that can be a bit of a challenge as well. But you do find, particularly the hard water here in Utah, sometimes you're better off getting a professional to clean those windows. And even if it rains afterwards, the rain will come off the window, because they'll use the proper solutions to make those windows not just clean, but there's like a very, very, very thin, I guess it's like a greasy material that allows the windows to stay cleaner for a bit longer, even if you have a downpour after it. Check your pipe fittings on the roof. Obviously check roof tiles, missing roof tiles, make sure they're tidied up. Repair fences, gates and pathways. That's really important. You know, sometimes you can't even get to the backyard because the gate is broken or it doesn't open or it's locked. Sometimes that happens. But let's make sure that they're repaired, because that will make a huge difference to how that front and backyard look like. And if you've got any pathways that have got sunken or high ridge sections, you need to flatten those out, obviously for health and safety as well, to make it look good. Irrigation needs to be working. Of course, we don't check that in the winter, but you can have a note on there and say this was winterized in September and everything was working correctly, and you can put a note there. That's good for the buyer to know that you've taken care of it. And if you put some instructions on what you did to winterize it, it's even more comfortable. You can say all the pipes were blown out and it was completely winterized, and the pipes outside are covered with a protective cloth to stop freezing. Touch-up paint, pretty important, particularly here in Utah. We can sometimes get some heavy areas of the home where sun has been beaten away at that paint, particularly on a side door to a garage. You may find the paint is nearly gone off that door, or is so badly peeled it looks very unsightly. So touching up areas of paint in those areas can be a great advantage. Really important, this last one here, make sure you know where the property lines are, and if there are any easements, make sure they're noted, and hopefully you can get those tidied up before you start to sell the home, easements. But make sure you know where the property lines are and make sure you check them. Sometimes, and we've had a situation a couple of times where we found the property lines were not correct. Any thoughts or comments on any of those areas? Okay. Just chime in. Okay. Here's another thought, and I'll just load these in, and we'll have a little chat it out, and we'll see if we can learn anything from them. So, outbuildings. Let's make sure they're open. I remember showing a house years ago. It was quite a drive for me to get there. I probably drove 40 minutes to get to this home, and my client was driving about the same. So we've driven, a good distance to get to them. They loved the home. The outbuildings were amazing. They wanted to look at the outbuildings. That was one of the reasons they were interested in this home. And we get to the outbuilding. These are new outbuildings, and we could not access it. It was locked. So I called the listing agent. I said, hey, great home. We really like this. We can't get in the outbuilding. His response to me was, oh, the sellers are out of town, and he lived like 45 minutes away. So we could not get into the outbuilding. Bottom line was, they didn't get an offer. So just make sure that if you're working with a property and you have got any outbuildings, you have got access to them. Wasteland. If you are looking at land, just be assured that you can get to that land. Sometimes you have to cross someone else's land to get to the piece of land you're looking at. If that's the case, make sure you've got permission to do that. And of course, if you are getting to land only, if there are gates there, hopefully there are gates, make sure they're open as well. I'll put a note at the bottom there. If you've got any third-party helpers that are going to help you on this open house, make sure they're briefed as to what they can and cannot do. Not be realtors, of course. If they're not realtors, they can't do the things you can do. So let's look at those 4 items. Anybody got any thoughts or comments on any of those? Let me bring someone else who we've not heard from today. Well, is it Haley? Are you on board, Haley? Did I get that name right? How would you like to chime in and give us any thoughts you've got on any of those items? Maybe it's not Haley. I've got one name there.
Is it Haiti or Haley?
Oh, is it Hagee?
Yes, hi, I'm Haiti with Real Path here in Salt Lake.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's Hagee, is it Hagee, not Haley? Hagee.
Haiti with the.
Oh, it is Hagee. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Anything you'd like to comment on either of those 4 items that might be helpful?
Well, usually when I do open house, I think I overdo my stuff. I spend more time that just to stage everything and get it ready. So everything helps, all those tips help. And the sellers are really happy about what they see, how the houses smell, and how it's staged for pictures and everything. So yeah, great tips.
Good. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
All right. Let's move on to advertising and marketing, shall we? See if we can learn a little bit on this screen. I'm not sure why that's not loading it, so let me just load that again. There we go. So we have talked about the front porch or the front door. Our goal is obviously to get people in that door. That's what we're trying to do. I'm going to load these in and we'll see if we can discuss any of these that might be helpful. Lots of different things we can do to advertise or to get this property seen and on the market. So first of all, we are definitely going to post it on the MLS. That's the #1 place. That's the place that is the place where most people are going to go to find their home, and it's going to be the one that's going to have the most accurate information. There are other places we can go. I just mentioned some there: Facebook, Zillow, Tree, Realtor, real estate agent websites or blogs. Sometimes these are not accurate, or sometimes these may not be the best place, but they may be helpful because the more you can get the message out on different platforms, the better off you are. So let's talk about posting online first. Anybody had any experience, a good experience where they've used some of these other areas besides the MLS to post properties?
Can I say something?
Fire away, thank you. Who's speaking?
Oh, okay. I have good experience about Facebook. I post before the listing was on the MLS, like less than 12 hours before we posted on the MLS, and I put some pictures and I mentioned that we were excited to have a new listing coming up soon and a few pictures, you know. And then I was supposed to do an open house, but guess what? I posted on the posting the pictures on Facebook. We got a buyer right away. That was instantly. The buyer said, "Well, I'll meet you," and I pre-qualified, ready to go. And it was on the MLS next day, and the property is under contract, of course, really fast.
Very good, thanks for sharing. I encourage you to always
No.
put it on the MLS first before you post it anywhere else.
Okay.
Comments on that? Yeah, always put it on the MLS first because you are a professional realtor and that's the professional platform we should use. Any other
Okay.
thoughts or comments on that? Yeah?
Um,
Okay. Yes, fire away.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, if you were gonna hold an open house, like I'll post it on Facebook. I'll make a post about it and then I'll make a story about it. And then I'll go live on Facebook and then just walk around the house and show the home and invite people to come and see it.
Yeah, definitely a great way to publicize your open house. Any other thoughts or comments on that first item?
Once it's listed and you've got some pictures in the MLS number associated with it, I've had several people where their neighbors have posted it on their personal
Yes.
Facebook pages
Yeah.
and said, "Won't you be my neighbor?" and put it out that way.
That's nice, yeah. Yeah, very
That's
good.
nice.
Yeah, very good. Anybody done flyers or door-to-door visits around the neighborhood before an open house? Laurie, Lee, I could see you, so why don't you chime in on that one? Thank you.
I think that's a really great way to market yourself too, because if anybody else in the neighborhood is thinking of moving, and they can see that you're out there really working it for your clients, you know,
Yeah.
that's just a testimony to your work ethic and a way to do a little bit of farming while serving your client. I mean, it's a sort of a double, triple sort of a thing.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. There's some realtors who do that often and they definitely get known and they do pick up more leads, knocking doors in the neighborhood. Make sure you've got a property specification sheet, you know, which you can pull off the Utah Real Estate website. Make sure you've got your agent one and you've got your client one, so that you make sure you give them the client ones for people who are coming to look at your home. Obviously, make sure you get your business cards. Some realtors may and do actually create little videos, and they go around and do a few interviews with local neighbours, and they have that streaming in the open house. Of course, we need to get as many people as we can to the open house, so it's really a good idea to reach out to any realtors you know, particularly those in your brokerage, and see if you can get them to come along. If you've got a realtor that, for whatever reason, cannot make it, but they have a client that can attend, then say, "I'll look after your client for you," and they're still going to be, you know, working with you, but you'll look after them, so that if the realtor can't make it, you can still have the client's turn to see the home. Any other thoughts or comments on that slide? Just chime in, just unmute and chime in.
I would like to hear how everybody does their own realting, or their own marketing. This is that's a good list of marketing, but I wonder if there are other ideas out there that other realtors are using.
Yeah, anybody like to respond to that, to Laurie Lee? I'll just pull that one up again. Anybody else do any other form of advertising or marketing that they could add to this list we've just gone through?
So this is Chelsea. We had a guy come from a lending company last week come talk to us about marketing, and he was saying that a big one right now that he's seeing is CMAs that are like all online. So use like BombBomb or some other sites and get people, send them like an email of a video of what their house is worth and stuff right now. He's saying that that's pretty big.
Good, thanks for sharing that, Chelsea, thank you. Anybody else got any other thoughts? You know, often it's not just one thing that works, it's lots of different things. And, you know, we just do lots of things. Some of them work better than others some of the time. So, you know, they don't all work all the same every time. They all work some of the time and some of them work all the time. It's kind of like one of those things. So doing lots of activity will certainly get your name around when you're trying to market this home. And we're all different, so we all have different styles or talents or gifts that we can offer to our seller. Let's talk a little bit about preparing our seller. This is really important. Sellers are going to be very interested in knowing what we're going to do, and they're going to be listening to us. We are the professional. So there are some cases where a seller may not want an open house. What might they be? Everybody got an idea? We're not always going to have an open house. Sometimes we'll have a situation where someone just doesn't want an open house. They have a very good reason for it. Anybody got any ideas what those reasons might be?
COVID.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
You know, some are really concerned with the open houses. Some I found are concerned about their security and people just, you know, casing their house kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll put these down. You basically got definitely the security one comes up. Some are just worried about nosy neighbours. I say don't worry about the nosy neighbours because they probably know people. And even though they're not interested in buying the home, they may know someone who's interested in buying the home. Some may be just very sensitive that the home is not ship shape and they've still got some junk there and they're worried about that being an embarrassment to them. And as Laurie Lee says, some of them are sensitive with health situations. So just make sure that your seller is comfortable. Don't force them to have an open house. You know, if they've got a good reason not to have one, then that's totally fine. We've got to encourage them, but hopefully we can make them feel comfortable either way, whether they are having one or not. So let's make sure that we are comfortable there. Here's some other thoughts we may talk about. So help your seller understand what the purpose of an open house is. And of course, as far as they're concerned, we're trying to sell it. And I've got some items that should load in here. I'm not sure why they're not loading it today. Let's see if we can try it again. Of course, we're trying to inform the neighbour we're selling. There may be someone that is interested in the home that they know, and obviously we hopefully be able to share that with them. We're trying to generate a certain amount of excitement in the neighbourhood, and one of the greatest things an open house does give us is it gives us feedback from good agents that are taking their clients through the open house. They'll say, yeah, this is priced well, or maybe it's not priced well, or maybe there's some areas in the home that are causing some concerns. So let's make sure we cover that. It's a really good idea to make sure our seller is aware of how long this is going to take. You know, they're going to be out of their home for a period of time, and we need to make sure they understand what the expectation is so that everybody's comfortable. Generally, I would say, you know, I will call you when we are done with this, but it's probably going to be, you know, whatever it is. It's a couple of hours. I said it's going to be a couple of hours, maybe a bit longer, but I should give you a call. So they're not coming in when you're still trying to tidy up the finished part of that open house. Any thoughts or comments on any items on that slide?
I have noticed with the Ring doorbell that a lot of times the sellers are sitting wherever they are and watching everything that's going on at the open house. And so they're hearing everything that you say, and they are hearing everything that everybody else says. And they are aware of how you are promoting and how you are interacting with those people. And so there's a lot less I don't know, it's just something to be aware of so that, you know, you're not bemoaning with someone over the sad state of their kitchen or, you know, whatever it is. There's an awareness there that they might be just sitting outside the door watching people who come in or who don't come in, or they'll know before they get home that nobody showed up to the open house, you know? And so there's, anyway, there's a lot of just transparency there with what's going on with your client and the open houses.
Yeah, and in some cases, they've even got cameras inside the home.
Yeah.
Not just on the outside. I have got a slide on that a little bit later on, so we'll delve a little bit deeper into that. Very good topic that one is. It's, but yeah, we need to be very careful because you know, we just got to be careful. We've got to be careful that we're neutral and we are kind and gentle.
Well, and maybe part of preparing your seller is also letting them know that they don't want to listen in. You know, there's the family who some buyers came in and were making fun of how funny one of the children looked in the family photo. And it was very crushing to the family. And, you know, and the little kid was sitting in the back seat of the car and heard all of that also. So, you know, you can also, as you're preparing your seller, say, you know, these are a bunch of people who don't know you that are going to walk through and have their own views on likes and dislikes, and it may not be something you want to listen into.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've seen that happen where, you know, a seller has been offended and they get an offer in from a buyer that offended them off the walk, that they just dismiss it. So very good point. Let's just make sure, I mean, I know at the moment we're in kind of a seller's market. We're not always in a seller's market, but there will be open houses where we would not get an offer during the open house. So we may get that these days. But those of us who have been in this business long enough will know the days when we have an open house, nobody attends because it's a buyer's market, and you know, we're struggling. So make sure they understand the expectation to get an offer during an open house. Or in this market, make sure they understand the expectation. They get several offers, and then we have to figure out how we look at those. Don't leave cash or valuables around the home. This is a really big one. I can't emphasize this enough. We had a client years ago. Open house went great. People were in the open house, and then after about, I don't know, when they returned back to the house after it was all finished, about an hour later, the client calls me up and says, "We have a big problem." What's the problem? "Someone has stolen my ring, my gold ring." And I'm thinking, this cannot be happening. So I said, "Okay, where did you leave the ring?" "Just on my bedside table." Very clever, that is, isn't it? So luckily, on all of our open houses, we always do a roll. So as people come in, we make sure we get their name, their telephone number, their email address, and whether or not they're working with a realtor. So we have information about everybody that's coming to the home. And I would suggest if you don't do that, that you do that, because one day you may need it. So I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to have to be calling these folk and see how we get on this. But I said, look, just have one more look around and see if you can find that ring. Maybe it wasn't there, maybe it's somewhere else, maybe it's in a drawer somewhere. No, it's definitely there. It's been got. Someone stole my ring. Right, this is just what I need. Like a bad headache going wrong. Anyway, so off she goes. I didn't do anything. I thought I'll just wait for this to settle for a bit. Oh, she calls me back in 30 minutes. "Found my ring." I said, "Great, it's about to give me a heart attack." So that may happen. All right. So beforehand, say to your seller, look, make sure you don't leave anything around. You know, it's valuable. Make sure your cash is all put away, because we don't want to be dealing with that security. You are responsible for that home as best as you can. However, you will notice in the contract, they're responsible for the home. You notice that in the contract clearly says that, you know, that they're responsible for the security of the home. So you just got to try and have some middle ground on that. Anybody have any challenges with security at all they like to share? Good. Prevention is better than cure on that one. We did talk earlier a little bit about pets. Let's just make sure if we can get those pets away from the home during an open house, you'll be far better off. If we do have to have the pets there, then let's have them in their crates. If not, you could have a challenge. We had an open house and we get there and the dog is still roaming around outside. I'm sure the dog was a comfortable dog, but people are afraid of dogs, so and they can't walk around the backyard if the dog's there. So you've got to remove the animals. Any comments or thoughts on animals, removing pets? All right, so we talked about that item there about repairs. If you've got some repairs that are going to be attended to, then maybe there's a broken window down in the basement. You say we are aware there's a broken window there, that will be repaired. Okay. Remind your seller that you prepare the house to sell it, not to live in it, and that's why it's so very important to keep it as best as we can. It's going to look like a show house. We are going to be removing as much as we can, as mentioned earlier on, from the walls and personal content, so that it looks neutral, so people can feel that they are living in the home. Any thoughts or comments on that slide? Anything anybody would like to add to? All right. Let's see where we go then. Let's talk about forms and paperwork. I talked about the sign-up form. I suggest you have that. Does anybody here use a sign-up form? Chelsea, I saw you nodding. You want to tell us what you've got on there, how that works, how you do it, how you administer it?
I just, when the people come in, I greet them and just ask them to sign in. And then on the sheet, I usually have like for their name and phone number, and then if they're working with a realtor or not.
Perfect. Do you ever have someone say, oh, no, I don't want to sign that? You ever have that happen? Chelsea, do you ever have that happen? Anybody refuse to sign?
I don't think I've ever had anybody refuse. Usually if they don't want to, then I just talk to them and get it verbally.
If someone did refuse to sign, how would you handle that? What could you say that might make them more comfortable signing that?
Like I said, I don't know if I could get them to sign, but I could probably get them to just talk to me and ask them like verbally, just, hey, are you working with anybody? And just go from there.
Okay, good. Anybody got any thoughts on how you might handle that? Laurie Lee, fire away.
I think if you assure them that you're not going to spam them, that you're not going to sell their information, that it's just a list for, to keep track for your seller of who came in. And I think a lot of people, if I went to an open house and I don't want to be contacted, I'm not going to leave them my name and number. So I assume that, most people have those same thoughts. So if they are afraid to, you can't make them, but you could always try with letting them know you're not going to sell their information or spam them.
Yeah, very good. Anybody else got any thoughts on that, how you might handle it? Okay, here's a thought you might consider. You may say something like, I'm just needing to let my seller know, just for security reasons, who's bought their home. Now, the security reasons can be various levels. Of course, we are looking at the security of the home. What happens if that person leaves something there, a jacket or something or other? You've got no way of following up with those people. So for security, it goes both ways. But this is a public open house, and it's good for your seller to know who's been in there in case we need to contact them. But you can absolutely assure them, as Laurie has just highlighted, that I will not be contacting them. Put their mind at rest on that.
Can I ask where you guys, Chelsea, I guess you seem to have had a lot of experience with this, but where do you position yourself in the home if you are asking them to sign a paper or something? Because I always feel a little awkward, if I'm going to be sitting at the table or standing in a room, what do you find is the most appealing and least awkward place to be?
Good question.
If I have a lot of people coming through, sometimes I'll just be in the kitchen and I'll talk to people as they're coming through from there. There's been some open houses where the house is just really empty. And so I sit at the front just so as they come in, there's somebody there to greet them. And then if I don't have a table or something, then I'll just have the sign up sheet on a clipboard. So.
Do you feel awkward? I always do.
Not really. If I'm like greeting them and just being, hi, thanks for coming, like, then I don't feel as awkward. I don't know.
I hate that used car salesman approach.
Yeah.
Right. I think Laurie Lee wanted to chime in there.
I feel like you need to sit in the place that is the most visible, where you can see the most of the house. And I say that because you have a responsibility. If you're the only person there and there's a lot of people coming through, if possible, when people come through, you need to walk through the house with them, because you're protecting your client's home. And so if there are too many people for you to be able to do that, then you need to be sitting in the most central location where you can keep an eye on everybody as much as possible. And I also think that, that uncomfortable feeling, I think there are a number of places, whether it's in sales or open houses, where we can feel uncomfortable, but it's a mental thing. It's a story you're telling yourself about something that's bothering you, about you being a used car salesman. And if you can shift into the value that you're bringing while you're there, and the service you're giving your client, and the service that you're providing for the buyers, you're there to give them information, to help them find their way through the house. If you can rebuild that story in your head that you're not a used car salesman, that you're there to provide them with something, then it's going to help alleviate that feeling for you. I also think that the list, we're back to the sign up form, is that with COVID going on, there are a lot of places where I went in. I went to Europe for 6 weeks, and they would have us, anytime you went into a museum, anytime you went into anywhere, you had to fill out all your contact information, so that if somebody went through, ended up with COVID, they could contact everybody and let them know that they had been exposed. And so I think that that's something else. If COVID stays like it is and people are concerned, you can just say, if anything comes up with COVID, we'll be able to reach out and get in touch with you. And I think that's legitimate. I don't think any of those things we're telling them are false. It is for the security of our sellers. It is in case there's an exposure to COVID. It is to keep track and see if we can answer questions for them. So none of them are snow jobs. They're all very legit, and they're worth discussing.
Yeah, and also people will pick up on our positive vibes. If you're kind and gentle and encouraging and welcoming and approachable, often people will be totally fine, filling out the information. Make sure you've got your specification sheets there. If you've had any flyers that you've used any part of this process beforehand, have them there so that people can take some of those home. And of course, sometimes you may have some lender information sheets that also might be helpful if you're working with a lender. People may not necessarily be looking at a house right now, they may be looking at a refinance or something. And so if you've got some lender information sheets down the track, when they call that lender, the lender is most likely going to promote you as a good realtor to use if they come to a situation of wanting to buy or sell. That brings us to our second keyword. Let's see if toot along a little bit quicker here. Second keyword today is going to be paperwork, Paperwork. That should be shouting out to you on the screen. So that first keyword, I can't repeat. Talk to Leslie, I didn't get that. That was also a word that began with the letter P. So our second one is paperwork. All right, let's toot along through the present. Well, a bit more on the setting up, and then we'll get into the presentation. So signs, literature, obviously the interior of the home, any gifts and IT. So let's have a look at these. Signs. Hopefully you got some directional signs. They're pretty cheap to buy, easy to use. Some will use flags. Flags are always quite strong and easy to see. Balloons, of course, are probably the cheapest. I'm not sure why that stopped. Let's just pull that in again. You've got your balloons. Talk to you about the front door mat looking nice. And there may be a sign, a welcome sign at the front door is also quite useful. Just a note on directional signs, if you're using directional signs, be aware of whatever the city rules are, where you put them. And I would suggest you just put them out maybe an hour or just a half hour, whatever it is, before the open house starts, and then make sure you take them down afterwards. If you've got an open house on Saturday, I would suggest you do not put them out on Friday, because you may find that the city have removed them. So just make sure you're aware of what the rules are when you're using signage. And in some cities, they do not allow you to use them. Anybody got any thoughts?
Can I ask about what people are using for balloons? I did a couple of open houses on 2 different properties out in Harriman, and it seemed like it was accentuating the fact that there was a lot of wind. And that area was just, it was blowing through it, and they were whipping the balloons around. I was noticing other open houses that were using hard balloons. They weren't, helium filled. Where do you get those?
We actually did a lot of business in Harriman, as it so happens. It's quite windy there. We did use balloons. We used to just literally go to Smith's, the store, and they had a little balloon selection there. And the staff were really good. They would give you a combination of colours that would match your signage. And if it was a windy day, we'd keep the balloons tight to maybe the sign, but we'd still have them there.
But have you seen those that some of the companies use that are, they're not helium? They're
like the one on the dealer.
Yeah, where do you get those?
I haven't used that. Are you talking, they're not helium, they've just got normal air in, or they've got something
They
else?
look like a balloon, but they're hard plastic, and they
They're hard plastic.
they stick them by their open house sign, and they're not whipping around.
Oh, okay, I haven't seen
No.
that.
Oh, Google it. Somebody's saying Google it. Okay.
So I'm a property manager as well, and we get them for my properties from HD Supply, and they're pretty decently priced.
From where supply?
HD Supply.
HD Supply, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, very good. The good thing about putting something outside the home, it will attract people to quickly find the house. That's what you're trying to do. And if you are using directional signs and you are maybe on a Saturday morning particularly, you'll probably be able to piggyback some other open house signs as well with other houses that are being sold in the area. That's what we used to find. Okay, let's move on here. Literature. Whatever literature you've got, just have it available. Whether you've got any handouts, or you've got flyers, or obviously you've got your business cards there, forms. We found it useful to have a web link to maybe a 3D tour or drone footage. You could have it on a computer in a loop so people can see what the area looks like. They can see how the house is situated in that community. That's something you may consider. I'm going to move on a little bit quicker here because I notice the time is rolling on. Use professional photography. Really important that is. You want good photographs. People are going to see this online, and they need to be able to see the home as best as it is, so that they are attracted to come to the open house. Make sure all your lights are turned on, and if you've got any drapes or blinds, make sure they are open to let as much light in as possible. And if you've got any ceiling fans, consider whether or not you're using them or not. Obviously, it's cold, you're not using. If you are using them, make sure they're not clanking. Make sure they're clean, so they're not throwing dust everywhere.
So this is Andrew. There's maybe a note there going back to the preparation is I go through when I go through the house, I look at the light bulbs, and a lot of times we will go out and buy 5 packs of 100-watt light bulbs and replace most of the light bulbs in the house because they're just not bright enough, or they're burned out. Yeah,
sometimes they're different types of white, cool white, warm white, try and get them all look the same. That will make the room look as best as it possibly can. Make sure you've got all your doors open. Yes, fire away. Who was that?
The photographs also are, they turn out better if they're done in the early evening. So you don't have glare coming in through the windows, or maybe you want to consider the fact that maybe the house you're having photos has a strong west window or west sunshine. You want to be thinking ahead of that for that.
Very good. Thanks, Deanna. Make sure you've got your doors open so that everything's inviting and inviting people to go into the rooms. Put a note there, make sure you've got keys to any outbuildings or rooms that are generally locked. And if you've got any rooms that are not visible, I had a client a few years ago. He said, "Do you want to see my gun room?" I said, "Yeah, let's see the gun room." And down we went to the basement. I thought, well, where's this gun room? And he opened up a little latch, and part of the wall came forward as a door. You could not see this room. It was completely, it was hidden. You couldn't see it. And you went into this room and you got all the lights there and his guns and his ammo. And quite an amazing little part of his property, but you would not have been able to see this room. He says, "What do you think of this?" It's very good. Make sure you've not got your guns here and you've not got your ammo here when we do the open house. So, but I would need to obviously know where it was so I could show people. And it was a big selling point for that home. So just make sure you're ahead of the race on those areas. Some other thoughts on interior. Setting up a dining room table can look quite attractive if you've got the opportunity to do that. And of course, making sure that your kitchen tops are real clean. Particularly if you've got granite. Granite can look like a mirror. You can really make that shine and look spotless. All of those I guess, tops in a kitchen, you need to make them uncluttered and make sure they are clean. They've got to be clean. And some other thoughts on interior. Go upstairs to the master bedroom. Really good idea to make sure that all the grouting is clean. Sometimes bathrooms can get a little bit grubby. So just make sure those tiles are clean. Make sure in the shower that there's no broken tiles and that they're all clean. Sometimes you can get that sort of dark.
Stephen, sometimes you
Yes.
show us the pictures of your dogs on the keywords. Are these the pictures of your home?
This is one of our homes, yeah. This is the last home we were in. Yes. Yeah, this
Very
is
nice.
the home we sold in Herriman. This is our home in Herriman, so good question, yeah. This was a two-story building. Yeah, make sure your bedrooms are clean and everything looks like it's a showroom. See, Deanne has been on so many of my classes. She's seen everything I've got to show on previous homes as well as animals. All right, so if you've got a new carpet or if you've got some areas that are going to have some heavy traffic, you might consider using that plastic covering to cover those hallways. That will be definitely helpful because when you get a lot of traffic through a house, it can start to, make the carpet a little bit rubbish. You have to clean it afterwards. Use some of that plastic stuff, that might be helpful. And if you've got any rooms to an outside deck, make sure they're open, as indicated there. Here's some other thoughts you might consider. Men usually are more interested in this than the ladies, but we kind of like to look at the mechanical room. And if you've just had it serviced, or if you've had something that's been repaired or looked at recently, you might want to put a note in there. It's really good to see when it was last serviced. It's good to see, that the sprinkler system is in good shape. And maybe you might put a pointer sign and say, this, and put the detail of whatever this is. If it's the furnace, you may say what the make is and when it was last looked at. This was repaired or that was repaired, and when it's next due for service. Men like to see that in a mechanical room setting. Gifts. Well, I should probably say, anybody got any questions on that previous slide? Anybody got any questions on the previous slide before I carry on? Okay. Gifts. People like giveaways. Everybody likes candy, particularly kids. And you may or may not use, or sometimes should or should not use some of these items. So just think about this. This can make a open house more attractive. Maybe you've got some candy you can give out for the kiddies, or some water, maybe some fresh baking. If you're doing fresh baking, just be aware that sometimes that can be, whoops, I went a bit too quick that did. Sometimes you can create a mess if you're giving them the baking items before. I'm not going to give it on the way out. So just think about that. Anybody got any thoughts or comments on this slide? The bottom line is people do like to take things away with it. They do like gifts.
I'd like to hear what everybody else does. There was a woman, well, she's a friend of mine that's a realtor, and she just decided she was going to go all out for her clients for every open house. And I think she just put it into her marketing budget, but she would have professional piano players come and play, you know, understated music. She would have crumble cookies there, or sometimes catered food. So the food was always really great. She was selling homes probably in the $500,000 to $1 million range, but she just really went all out with her open houses. They were very lovely.
Now, how does that transfer to people walking through the house with a crumble cookie and crumbling that cookie?
I don't know. It's just a takeaway. But it was something she did, and her clients really appreciated it because they could tell she was going all out, and everybody who went loved it because it was just above and beyond what you'd see at a normal open house. And I thought it was really interesting. I hadn't seen anything like it before. I hadn't seen an agent go so all out for their clients with, you know, live entertainment and everything.
Yeah, live entertainment, that's definitely original. We've often done gifts. In fact, we always do some sort of gifts in there. We found them to be very welcoming. And even when we've done, you know, the cookies, then maybe a little bit on the carpets, which you can easily vacuum up later, but often there's not, you know, often it's not an issue. Or if you're doing candy, maybe the old street wrapper here and there, but it's not usually a big problem. We haven't found it to be a problem. But when you're giving things away to potential buyers, they do have a memory of that home, particularly if they're looking at, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 homes that day, and your home stands out, like I just mentioned, you know, it stands out because it was more than an experience of just walking the home. Then often that can help them remember the positiveness of that experience walking through that property. Any other thoughts or comments on that?
I just think about like Parade of Homes, where you go through the garage on your way out, and that's where they tend to give you your treats so that you're not tracking them through the house. But I don't know how that would translate to the welcoming feeling of an open house. Seems like it would be a different approach. Yeah,
I think you just have to figure out what you can do with your homes. We did sell a lot of larger homes in Harriman, you know, that are usually around the $500,000 price. So we would obviously put more effort into those, but we found we'd do it on the small homes as well because we were kind of all lined up to do it, so to speak. We just treated them all the same. Even with our photography, we would do drone footage on all of our homes, and we do 3D photography as well. We just want to get as much out to the potential buyers they can possibly absorb on how good the home looks.
I think you can
Ideas
always
to think
ask your
about.
clients. And just in response to her, ask your clients, would they rather you create this welcoming experience with, you know, some treats and whatnot in the kitchen, or, you know, is it the house staying super clean really important to them, and do they want you to provide booties at the door? You know, and you know, let them decide how they want you to do that.
Great counsel, great idea. Super. All right, let's move on. So information technology, sometimes this can be useful in the home. And I'll just load that in there. So sometimes if you have got a loop footage of the home in 3D or drone, you can have a laptop running. If you've got a home that's got a theatre, you could have a movie running. Most homes have got a TV, so you could have some background music anyway running in wherever the TV is. Just consider how you could make the home attractive and memorable. That's what we're trying to do here, make it memorable. Any other thoughts on that last slide? Okay, let's talk on, let's see where we are here. Got stuck, I think. Okay, let's pull it out and see if we can go back in on that one. Not sure why it got stuck. Let's see if it goes this time. Okay. Presentation. So, this is kind of like your exhibition, all right? This home is. And we'll just highlight some of the areas on this last stretch, in the last 30 minutes we've got here. Here are some thoughts you might consider. I put here, you could have a lender table there if you are working with a lender, to have the lender there, she or he can give out their information. And that's also another person there to help with security. If you are working with a big home and you need some help with security, just make sure if you're not using realtors, they understand what they can and cannot say. Let's look at some of the highlights you can work with when we're working with this home. Covered most of these. Okay. Yeah, we've covered all of those, just about. That last one was working with your dispersonality skills when you're working with people. Discuss areas that your seller may be uncomfortable with. This is okay, yeah, this is a good one. So if you've got some items in the home that might be sensitive, and one of them is, of course, using the bathroom. Think about that, because some sellers do not want visitors using their bathroom. I'm just going to pull out of that one again because it's got stuck for some reason. And some people do have cameras in their home. So if that's the case, I would suggest you put a note on there and say that, you know, rather you not use the bathroom. Same with, you know, kiddies playing on a trampoline, you know, or people adjusting controls on music or theatre or whatever it may be, or maybe you've got some expensive table art. Just have some signing on there if you don't want people to touch those items. And of course, if you're working as the buyer's agent, it might be good to have a conversation with your client beforehand about use of bathrooms. Anybody want to comment on use of bathrooms on an open house? No? Okay. It's a sensitive area, so just be careful that you have a chat with your client beforehand, because definitely some folk do not like their bathrooms being used by visitors. And I think someone already mentioned early on about whether or not you've got a shoes off policy within the home. If you have, then maybe have a note, a little basket with the little shoe covers at the front door. Usually people are usually okay with that. You may consider including somewhere, it can be on a flyer or it could just be on a note somewhere to indicate what you have actually got outside. Sometimes you may not have the ability to talk to everybody. I'm not sure why that one's not loading in, so I'm going to just do it again. But it might be a good idea to mention if you've got, you know, some special flagstone pavement or expensive rocks, or maybe you've got a fire pit, you've got a fruit orchard, you've got a water feature. If you've got things that are going on outside that may not be easily seen or shared, then you can make a note of those things and highlight it. Some other thoughts you might consider is to have some photographs of the building at different times of the day or even different times of the year. So you can see what the building looks like maybe at night time. That can be a huge advantage to a buyer if they're visiting during the daytime. They can see maybe what the landscaping looks like, or what the scenic views are, how, you know, everything lights up. You may want to show it looks like in the summer. If you're showing the house today, you've got snow on the ground, you've not got any flowers out, but you can show some photographs of what this house looks like in the summer months. That brings us up to our third keyword. Any questions on those last few slides I've shared? Or any highlights? Anybody like to say anything they'd like to highlight from what we looked at? A bit quiet today, folks. I've got a few folks chime in. Susan, how about you saying hi again? Anything that's stood out over the last few slides that we've shared that you might want to highlight?
I think Susan is not on the class anymore. It looks like she had to leave.
Oh, she did? Okay. Well, in that case, let's see what else I've not heard from. Andrew, how about you? Would you like to chime in again? Anything that's sort of caught your attention over the last few slides you might want to highlight that might be helpful to others to hear?
I see the dog picture of keyword, but you haven't given that to us yet, right?
The third one's coming up, yeah.
Oh, okay, very good.
Very good.
No, I agree on it. I think one of the, I love the technical stuff. Like a lot of times there's features within the home that haven't been, like you would never know, even from an inspection. And so I love getting that list of features from clients. You know, they have some crazy surround sound system they put in, or just a lot of different things like that. I think sellers like to brag about that stuff too. So I think it helps with kind of rapport too, for them to be like, you know, I mean, this is their home. They put a lot of effort into it. And so it gives them an opportunity to kind of put those things out there too. And so you kind of, like that last slide said, having a list of those things in the home.
But how do you, Andrew, how do you point those out? I mean, are you putting a paper with painter's tape on the wall, or how are you pointing out somebody's surround sound system or something?
No, just on like when they have like the flyer when they walk in, usually just having like a little.
Just listing it on the flyer.
Yeah, just a special feature section. I think a lot of times like we waste space on flyers listing very obvious stuff, and instead of using that space to list things that aren't so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have, you know, if you've got some cabling that's not seen, you could have a notice on the wall to say behind here we have, you know, some extra, you know, TV cabling, whatever it may be, you know, low voltage wire for security systems or telecommunication, whatever it may be. The key thing, as Andrew said, is to try and share as much as you can about this property. That's when people get excited about it. You're trying to stand out. You're trying to be different to, you know, other open houses they're going to be looking at. So the third keyword is going to be presentation. We've all been P's this day. So the other two also began with a P. I can't mention those again, but if you missed them, talk to Leslie Ann and she will be able to assist you. And don't share it in the chat. So presentation is the third keyword. PRESENTATION, presentation. That's your third keyword. As we get into the home run on this, we'll just finish up. Let's talk about the cleanup. Okay, so we are going to have people walk through the home, and we need to leave the home in the best state it was before we started. You know, hopefully better. We need to leave it better than it was. So collect all your details and your information leads, and you don't want to leave that there. Put a note here, tidy up and clean the house. So sometimes you may have to get the vacuum out and clean it up. And, lost property. So here's a question for you. Let's say, for instance, you're going through the home and you see a jacket, or maybe you see, you know, a cardigan or jumper or something. What do we do? What are we going to do with that? Now think about this, you're in someone else's home, you've got members of the public come through, there's an item that's been left and you don't know whose it is. It clearly wasn't there when you started the open house, it's definitely been left by someone that has the property. What are the safest things you can do dealing with that lost property item for your protection and the protection of the person who owns the property? We've all gone quiet on me. Laurie Lee, I'll have to have you because I know you'll be able to give me something on this.
I think we need to remember to go through also and turn off the lights because you don't know how long it's going to be until the owner returns.
Yeah, we're going to do all that, absolutely. Make sure the doors are shut and locked and the windows are closed and all that. But what about this lost property?
Well, with your list, I think that you would probably contact everyone who had attended. Well, first of all, check with your client, let them know what had happened, and then contact everyone on the list and say, hey, there were some things or something left in the home. If you've lost something, let me know what it was. And see if you find the owner that way.
Okay, so here's some thoughts you might consider, and that's good. Obviously, we're not going to leave it at the property. We know it wasn't there before because we bought the property beforehand and the seller was out. So we know this has been left after. And maybe it was a phone, maybe it was a wallet or a handbag or something. Ideally, if you're in this position, ideally, you do want to get a witness, okay? It needs to be logged, ideally. You're obviously not going to leave it at the property. You don't really want to take it home. If you were close to your brokerage, ideally, you would take it to your brokerage and get them to log it. And then you could then call everybody. They go and pick it up from the brokerage if they were close by. If not, you would then obviously have to be custodian of it and call that list and see if you figure out who it is. Okay.
Maybe take a photo with your phone of where you found it before you touch it.
Perfect. Yes. You just need to protect yourself. That's the important thing here, folks. Let's say, for instance, it was somebody's handbag or it was a wallet or something with some valuable in it. You need to be able to protect yourself. So perfect. Take a photograph of it. Log it if you can with a third party. Ideally, a brokerage is the best place to log it if it's local. Make the calls. If for some reason you can't find it, then you would definitely always take it to the police station and log it there. The most important thing is to protect yourself so someone cannot say, hey, yeah, I left my wallet there. There was $1,000 in there and now there's only 500. And Laurie Lee, I'd like you to give me the other 500. You see, you just got to make sure you protect yourself if you are in this position. Lost property is an area of concern. That's why one of the reasons you really want people's names when they come in so you can approach them if that happens. Any other thoughts or comments on that? We covered that one.
Sorry.
Obviously, remove all those directional signs. There's something absolutely to say there. Was that you, Deanna? I can't see everybody, so.
Oh, I just said, sorry, I jumped the gun on that one.
Oh, no, you were ahead of the race, which is good.
I'm moving to the end of the class, fast.
Move those directional signs, guys. Really be careful to do that. And make sure that you call your seller, tell them you're finished so they can come and get their home back, all right? Even though you may have said you're going to be 2 hours or whatever it was, still tell them, I will call you because, you know, at the end of the 2 hours, you may have a real interested buyer that's come in. And so that may take another 20 minutes before you're done. You don't want the seller turning up when you're working with someone. So give them a call at the end and say, hey, we're all ready to go. And wait there until they come. So you can hand the home over to them in shape. You're obviously going to tell them how it went. If you didn't have anybody attend, it can be a bit unfortunate. Generally speaking, you're going to have someone there. But whether you've got interested parties or not, you can still share with them how the experience was. Follow-up. So it is important we do a follow-up. You know, we're professionals. And, you know, hopefully you can reach out to all of those agents or their buyers in. And what are some of the things you might ask an agent when you're following up? What are some of the key 3 or 4 areas we might ask them? We're trying to find out how the feedback is on this home. Chelsea, let's bring you in. You've done a few open houses. So you're going to call the agents first. What are some of the things you're going to ask them for? It's going to be very interesting for you. So.
You could just call the agent and just say, hey, Joe Smith came through my open house the other day and he expressed interest in it. And I was just following up with you to let you know that he came through. And because sometimes the agents don't even know that they're actively looking at homes right now, or that they're interested in any and stuff like that.
Okay, what about if you're working with an agent that actually brought their buyer through the home? You're calling the agent now as a follow-up. What are some of the things you're going to ask that agent?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe just ask what his clients thought about the house and if he
Okay,
had
so
any
that's-
feedback.
So that's number one. How did the house show? You want to know
Yeah.
how it showed, okay? How did it show? Yeah, perfect. Would another one be, do you think it's priced well? How do you think it's priced? See, an agent is another professional person who can give you a second opinion. That agent may say, yeah, it was really priced well. Or they may say, you know, I'm wondering if it was overpriced a little bit. And the reason I tell you this is because of, okay, that's interesting information for you to have. Or they may say, you know, I kind of thought it was a bit underpriced actually. You might be able to get a bit more for that in this market. All right. So you want to know about their feedback. Agents are a great place for us to find out from a professional, another fellow professional, how this house is faring price-wise, how it is showing, and of course, you know, whether or not their client has any interest in the home. So the first three, they're the three things you're really after. Anybody got any comments on that when you're working with, talking to another agent? And of course, the agent may share something that is of a concern. You may say, you know, it was a great house, but we didn't really like that blue wall that was in the main living room. And you call the next agent and they say, you know, we really didn't like that blue wall that was in the main room. And then you call the next agent and you know what they're going to say. Then you go back to the client and you say, you know, we talked about that blue wall. I think we've still got to get that painted. Because the client didn't want to change the blue wall because they love the blue wall. You see, so that's really good feedback, and that will help you get the house better prepared for the next showing. Obviously, you'll contact any unrepresented buyers and see if they are interested. Obviously, if you said it early on that you're not going to contact them, obviously you won't. But if you are able to, that's a good way of trying to find some new interest. Meet with the seller or call them and give them a full report. I think you should be totally transparent with your seller. I always say to my sellers, look, I'm going to tell you exactly everything that comes to me, so you've got it all. And if they're good with that, then usually they can work with it. And if there is a painted wall that's been uncomfortable, you can say, you know, a lot of people brought this up, maybe we should look at now painting that wall a more neutral colour, which will help us. Or if there was, you know, too much clutter or whatever it may be, too many weeds back in the backyard, let's work on those areas to get them tidied up. Hopefully we learned something today. Anybody like to highlight anything that was new to them that they may have seen that they've not seen before?
I liked when you brought up the point of taking pictures of the homes in like nighttime and daytime. I had never thought of that. I've always just done daytime, but it was good to see those pictures at night.
Perfect. Thank you, Chelsea. Anybody else got anything to highlight that might be useful to someone to remember? Thank you. Shall I give everybody the opportunity to chime in there? Okay. Well, very good. Today we've looked at a few different things. We've got to the close of this. Just be aware that when you're working on these open houses, try and think outside the box a little bit. Try and be unique. Try and be different. Try and be interesting. Try and be try and work on new platforms that have not been done before by realtors. That will make you stand out. And obviously, we're trying to sell this home. And I know that most homes are probably going to sell in this market because there's not enough inventory. However, if you want to get top dollar for your home, you've got to put in the extra work. And those little tiny tweaks that we put into this business will make these homes more attractive, make your home more sellable. Any final thoughts or questions from anyone before I hand over to Leslie? Yes, Laurie, thank you. You've been a great contributor today. Thank you very much.
You've had your eye on that microphone, haven't you?
I